Hi, this is John Sonmez from Pluralsight, and in this module we are going to be talking about variables and operators in Java. We're also going to be covering a few other topics that are related to variables and operators, and this is kind of going to be the really first steps in learning Java. And before we get really into this module, I just wanted to let you know that for this entire course and for all of these modules, a programming language is something that is really hard to learn from a step-by-step concept introduction style. And what I mean by that is that you may want to go back and review some of these modules as we get further, because I'm going to reference some things in this module, for example, that are going to cover some material that we're not really going to introduce until later modules, because a lot of things in a programming language are very dependent on each other. And so for us to talk about variables and operators, we're going to have to talk a little bit about things like classes and conditional statements. And so when we cover those later on, you might want to come back here to get the full picture. Usually, if you look at a lot of programming books, you'll find that a lot of the books are kind of written this way, basically with having you go back and forth between chapters in order to really get the full concept of it. Now, if you go through the course just one time straight through, you should be able to definitely program in Java, but sometimes to get the real big picture understanding of it, you might want to go back and review some certain parts of certain modules that will start to make more sense to you now as we go further in. So I just wanted to say that just as a caution, so as we're going through here, if we encounter some concepts that we haven't really introduced yet that are going to come in later modules, you don't feel like you're lost, like you need to know this yet, because you don't. It's going to be introduced later, but I need to show these concepts in order to show the examples for some of the things that have to do with variables and operators. So let's go over what we're going to cover in this module. We're going to cover a lot of ground here, and we're going to start with basically defining what a variable is. And if you're new to programming in general, this is going to be beneficial to you. If you already know about programming, we're just going to talk about it in terms of Java. And then we're going to do the same thing with a type. We're going to introduce a type, talk about what a type is, not go too much into detail there. And I'm going to show you kind of how to use a variable in type in Java and how to do some basic declarations. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to name variables. I think it's very important for someone learning a programming language to get kind of some good skills in naming variables, because that really helps you to make readable code. Then we'll cover scopes a little bit, and we're not going to go too in-depth into scopes. I just want to introduce the concept of scopes so that you're aware that variables have scoping in Java. And then we're going to get into primitive types, and we're just going to cover what are the primitive types, what is a primitive type in Java, and introduce that concept. And then we're going to get into somewhat of a complex concept, but I feel that a Java programmer really needs to understand this. So we're not going to go into the really technical details of this concept of boxing and unboxing, but we are going to talk about it, and I'm going to give you an understanding of what it means when someone is talking about boxing and unboxing, and just some of the things that you want to be aware of, how Java operates as a language regarding that subject. Then we'll go into operators. This is something that you're going to definitely need to know in order to program in Java. These are things like adding, choosing whether or not two values are equal or one is greater or less than another. All of the kind of operations that you can do in Java are going to be under this operator section. Then we're going to talk about strings, which are a special type in Java, and we'll go into details on how they are in that section. And then finally, we'll wrap this up by going a little bit into arrays. Arrays are something that is not really a concept that's extremely important in most of the programming today, because we use collections, which is another topic that we're going to introduce in the second part of this course. But it's still good to have a knowledge of arrays, and we're going to introduce that here.